Okay, this is the quadratic formula notes from last Tuesday, like more, I don't know, February 27th or something like that. So some of you wanted those notes. So this is the quadratic formula. There it is, opposite of b, plus or minus the square root of b squared, minus 4ac divided by 2a. Make sure you only can use that when your quadratic equation, which is in this form, quadratic, then linear, then constant, is equal to 0. So you always want to make sure one side is equal to 0 before you do this. The discriminant, which is the number, the radicand, the part under the radical, tells you what kind of answers you have. So if that radicand is ever a 0, it means that you have a double root. And that means that your graph might look like, let's say your answer is 2. It means a double root means that's going to hit and go bounce off, and it does not go through. That's what a double root looks like. So like if you had 4 plus or minus square root of 0 over 2, your answer would be 2. Right there. So this one, if your discriminant is positive, it means that your graph is going to hit it twice. It's going to actually go through, goes through, comes back through. So make sure you can see that on your graphing calculator, and then there will be 2 real roots. If it's ever negative, that means you have a negative, something like a -8 under this. You have to bring the I out and then simplify radical 8 with the factor tree. So that's going to end up being 2i radical 2. Then you might have a number out front like this. But what that means is you have 2 imaginary roots. Imaginary roots do not touch the x-axis at all. It means that you're going to have something like this. It does not touch this axis. It won't go through it. Where like this one, it goes through twice. And then if it's a positive perfect square, it means that you have 2 real roots like this one. But you can actually see them. So it might be like 3 and -1. I mean, it's pretty ones. It just means they're nice. It means you won't have if you do the quadratic formula, the radical will go away. The radical will disappear. That's if you have a perfect square underneath. So let's get to it. Quadratic formula. So the first thing you want to do is identify A, B, and C. They're right there. A, B, and C. They're in order. Next thing you want to do is plug them in. So you always say, so here's the formula right here. So it's the opposite of b, which is 4, plus or minus. Do not write this, -4 squared. That will give you a -16, and that will be wrong. If you're going to type it in, you have to type it in parentheses. However, I don't even type it in like that. I just do it in my head, and that's 16. Make sure this is a positive number. -4, that's in the formula, times a, which is 2, times c, which is -3. Divided by 2 times a, which is 2. Now, the part that you want to put in the calculator is the part that's underneath. So we're going to put in a 16 minus 4 times 2 times -3. And that gives you 40. So this is 4 plus or minus square root of 40 over 4. Now, 40 is not a perfect square, but it's positive. So you have 2 nice roots. And then you can do a factor tree with 40. So it's 2 and 20, 2 and 10, 2 and 5. Take one of the 2's out. So it's 4 plus or minus 2 radical. And there's still 10 left over 4. So you have the square root of 10. So now there's something called a division triangle. This only happens if you have a number in front of the plus minus, a number after the plus minus, and a number underneath. It excludes the radical. That one's done. That's square root of 10. But I can take a 2 out of all of these. So you should take the 2 out of all those and reduce it. But you can only do it if there's 3 numbers. And that would be your answer. So for B, it does not equal to 0. So make sure you set it equal to 0. Squeeze that 14x in the middle. A is 5. B is -14. And C is -3. So the opposite of B is 14 plus or minus 14 squared, which is 196. You can do that right on your calculator. -4 times 5 times C over 2 times A. So it's 14 plus or minus 196 minus 4 times 5 times -3 is 256. Now, I don't know if you know this, but 256 is a perfect square. So if you even think it might be, you should probably try it. Square root of 256 is 16. So anytime you have a perfect square, the radical is going to disappear. So this is 14 plus or minus 16 over 10. This technically is a division triangle, so you could take a 2 out of all of these to make the numbers a little bit easier to work with. You can make it out of 7, 8, and 5, like take half of all of them, and then split up the plus or minus. So this is 15 over 5, or 3. This is negative 1 over 5. So you just do a little math. It's 3 and negative 1/5 as your answers. So this one right here, subtract 6x. Squeeze it in the middle. A is 9, B is negative 6, C is 1. So the opposite of B is 6 plus or minus. B squared is 36, not negative 6 squared. It's negative 6 squared, which is 36. Minus 4 times 9 times 1 over 2 times 9, which is 6 plus or minus the square root of 36 minus 36. That's a 0. Over 18. This is one of those ones, if it's a 0, it says right here, anytime it equals 0, there's one real root. So double root. It looks like that on the graph. So it's going to be 6 over 18, because that plus or minus 0 cancels, and your answer is 1/3. And that's a double root. So if you're graphing it, we're like, here's a 1. 1/3 is like right here. It's probably something like this. And then this one, let's subtract the 6 over here. So you get 0 equals negative 5x squared plus 4x minus 6. So A is negative 5, B is 4, C is negative 6. So the opposite of B is negative 4, plus or minus B squared, which is 16, minus 4 times A times C over 2 times A, which is negative 4 plus or minus. There's a lot of numbers under here, so I'm using this. 16 minus 4 times negative 5 times negative 6 is negative 104 over negative 10. Now, whenever you have two negatives like this, they can become positive. Bring the I out, and then do a factor tree for 104. So it's 2 and 52, 2 and 26, 2 and 13. So we're going to have 4 plus or minus, bring a 2 out. And there's still going to be a 26 left under. Division triangle is 2 plus or minus I radical 26 over 5. That's your answer, and that's it. Can you see that? There's a division triangle right here. Take a 2 out, so it's 2 plus or minus I radical 26 over 5.